Hello and welcome to With Wilmer Anderson. This is the channel where we talk about financial, economic, and political things in plain and simple English. Today we're going to be talking about the history of the gentrification of the Bronx. Let me first start by saying if it wasn't for the financial crisis of 2008 and if it wasn't for COVID, the Bronx probably would have been as gentrified as Brooklyn is today. Those are the only two reasons why I believe it didn't happen as of yet. In any case, first of all, let's talk about what is gentrification. Gentrification is when a different level or a higher economic class people come in and remove poorer people and take their environment from them. It was a term coined by Ruth Glass in 1964, and what she was referring to were certain communities in London that they wanted to gentrify. The word gentry is important because what gentry is an old French term, and gentry means like someone between a nobleman and a commoner, such as an artisan or something of that nature. The first residents to arrive in the Bronx were German, Dutch, and English. Now, the Bronx, for those who don't know it, is the only borough of the United States that's directly connected to the United States. And its first physical connection, permanent connection, was the High Bridge Aqueduct in 1846. What that did was that brought water to New York and was a walkway. Still very scenic now if you went back to see it, which connected to both the Bronx to Manhattan. The Grand Concourse in the Bronx was developed as a concept back in the late, I'd say about 1890. And the thing about the Grand Concourse, it has very broad walkways and beautiful Art Deco homes or apartments. The issue that most people don't know about that is that there was a plan to build a highway right where Grand Concourse is, a highway that would go beneath the level and carry traffic with the brand up that place. Now we're going to talk about the Bronx was the first borough to join Manhattan and become the city of New York. And it was the West Bronx. The West Bronx was the first borough to be attached to Manhattan. I can't find out the reason why it happened, but there are some unique things about the West Bronx. There is the Hudson Mohawk Railroad, which goes from Boston. You gotta remember, Manhattan back in those days, Manhattan was only serviced through ferries. There was no bridge between Manhattan and New Jersey. The only connection bringing in food on the railroad was through the Mohawk Hudson Railroad, and that was in the Spuyten Duyvil area of the Bronx. Another interesting fact about that is that there was a swamp there called the Spuyten Duyvil Swamp. The city decided to dredge that swamp, and what that did is that allowed commerce to come from Long Island Sound and the eastern part of New York to the Hudson River. Because by draining that swamp, you connected the Harlem River to the Hudson River, and you wouldn't have to go all the way around Manhattan to get to the Hudson River. The third event happened was the Broadway Bridge that goes across Marble Hill. The Broadway Bridge was the first permanent bridge that bridged both Manhattan to the Bronx. And this is just my theory. This is why I believe the city of New York annexed the Western Bronx first and then went out years later, acquired the Eastern Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. At the turn of the century, the Bronx was known as Industry City. There was heavy industry, a lot of warehouses, a lot of farms. There were Jewish Irish, Italian people from Manhattan have moved up from the Lower East Side. And the thing that happened in the 30s with the Depression is people had to move out of Manhattan and move north. And that was to the Bronx. Also, at the same time, in 1910, there was the beginning of the Afro-American migration from 1910 to 1930. From 1940 to 1970 with the second wave. The Puerto Ricans, due to 1917 when President Wilson made them protectorate, started to come to New York. There was also Operation Bootstrap, which the U.S. tried to turn Puerto Rico from an agricultural society into an industrial society. And in 1954, the largest migration of Puerto Ricans headed to New York. White flight had begun. The Cross Bronx Expressway, at that time, that area there that was going to be gentrified was mainly a Jewish, Irish, Italian neighborhood. Lydian Edelstein went against the city of New York, headed by Robin Moses in this particular case, and I'll get into him much later in other episodes. Paid contractors to show there were alternate paths to building the highway through their community. They showed Mr. Moses that he could build the highway for less money if he went south through Katona Parkway, which was an emerging black area. He would not only demolish less houses, but he would save the city money. You're going to learn about Robin Moses. He got his way. They lost. He demolished the neighborhoods and went right through. A little bit more about the Bronx. The Hunts Point, at those times was industrial, warehouse, manufacturing, some housing. But then when it got to the 60s, the Hunts Point section of the Bronx, there was prostitution, drugs, and it went down. Now the new fish market is there and the rents have doubled. But once again, I'm saying and stressing the fact that the Bronx is on the verge of big time gentrification. Like the Brookhaven properties that may be proposed for $950 million. The state did fight back to try to get affordable housing when these people are getting moved. They created the Mitchell-Lama law, affordable housing, which made housing for over 100,000 people, like Co-op City, which was the result of Mitchell-Lama. Co-op City is a city in itself in the Bronx, designed for the purpose of affordable housing. They had their own police station, they had their own fire department, they had their own power stations. Well, in any case, that's much in a nutshell. I hope you got enough information from this to further your interest into finding more things out about the Bronx. I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like you to give me a thumbs up and please subscribe. Have a good day.